Let's talk about some Star Wars EU here. Let's talk about what a lot of people consider to be the greatest achievement the EU ever created. That is this book here by Steve Perry. It's called Shadows of the Empire. It's a book that takes place between episodes 5 and 6, explaining a lot of the little things in episode 6, but also weaving this incredible story about the rise and fall of power. Just a really good story. Shadows of the Empire is about Luke, Leia, Lando, Chewie, R2, and C-3PO trying to rescue Han from Boba Fett. But their plans are being thwarted because there's been a hit taken out on Luke Skywalker by a character named Prince Caesar. He is the leader of the #1 crime organization in the galaxy, Black Sun. Prince Caesar is the third most powerful person in the Empire. And his goal is to take down the second most powerful and then humiliate him in front of the Emperor, who's the most powerful. The second most powerful, of course, is Darth Vader. And he figures that killing Luke and framing Vader for it will tarnish Vader's reputation in front of the Emperor, the only person that Vader bows down to. So, Shadows of the Empire is a really excellent read and introduces some really good characters. For instance, we get Prince Caesar, one of the best Star Wars villains ever constructed. He is Faline. They are a lizard species that have these pheromone powers that attract the opposite sex, so he can seduce anyone. And he uses these to his advantage. We also get another great villain named Guri. Guri is a humanoid android. The only one of her kind who is trained to be an assassin droid. She looks like a woman about my age. And she passes for a human, like, pretty much no matter what, unless you do a body scan. She's like a fantastic martial artist. She's just this ultimate killer machine. And then we get one of the fan favorite characters, and one of mine as well. We get Dash Rendar. Dash Rendar is essentially a smuggler to sort of replace Han Solo. He's a real big hotshot, but he's just a really cool character that I wish we got more of in the EU, but sadly we don't get much Dash Rendar. In this story, we get to see Lando. Now, Lando's someone who kind of gets, like, not a lot of writers talk about Lando, and it really distresses me. And we get to see Lando as pretty much a main character in this book, which I really liked. Also, we get to see Luke coping with the fact that he is Vader's son, and the whole turmoil of that. We also get to see Leia coping with whether does she really love Han, and how does she feel about Luke. Just all of these things are brought up in this book, and Steve Perry does a perfect job. But before I really finish up this review and talk about the novel, I have to talk about the comic Shadows of the Empire, written by John Wagner. It's essentially a straight adaptation of the novel, but with a few things added and a bunch of things taken out. For instance, Boba Fett is in this. Now, Boba Fett, of course, is the catalyst. They're trying to get Boba Fett, but we don't get Boba Fett's perspective in the book. We get it in the comic book, which is taken from the Battle of the Bounty Hunters pop-up comic book, which was a weird thing from the 90s. And we get to see how Boba Fett is trying to survive against all of the other bounty hunters from Empire Strikes Back, like Bosk and 4-LOM and all of them. Also, we get to see Jix. Jix is one of Vader's secret agents. He shows up occasionally in the EU. I can think of one other one-shot comic from the Rebellion era that has him as the star. But he infiltrates Jabba the Hutt's swoop gang and tries to kill... Actually, saves Luke's life, technically. But yeah, it's cool to see him. But here's my problem with the comic. The comic is great as like a supplement to add to the novel. But unfortunately, and I am so sorry, my family, I told them I was filming and they're like, "Oh, let's sing and make really stupid ass like things." So, I apologize. The comic, if you read this on its own, is not good. I'm just going to say that right now. It's not good because it's just so choppy. And they change a lot of the dialogue in the comic, and they make it just too 90s, and just having 90s slang, and that dates the book, unfortunately. The art's not bad in here. So here we get to see some of it right there. It's alright. It's not the best, it's not the worst. But it's a great supplementary read. Also, I can't just skip this part of the review. I have to talk about the merchandising for Shadows of the Empire. This is the biggest the expanded universe ever got. This was back in the day when George Lucas actually read everything the EU did instead of just the comics. Eventually, when the prequels took over, he just read the comics. That was just easier for him, I guess. And he stopped reading the novels. He still handpicked authors, though. In fact, Steve Perry has mentioned before in the past that he got a letter from George Lucas saying that George just loved the book and that if this had been written in the 80s, they would have made this into a movie. And this is the ultimate Star Wars story, and I'm on the record for years saying this. This was a Star Wars story that needed to have a movie but never did. It has its own soundtrack, which is just incredible. It had its own source book from West End Games, but then again, a lot of the West End Games, the Bantam books had supplementary books like Truce at Bakura Dead and the Thrawn trilogy, just to name a few. But the toys. Now, there were EU toys back in the 90s in the Power of the Force series. I know because I remember Kyle Katarn, Mara Jade, Thrawn, the Dark Trooper, the Space Trooper. They were all characters. Luke from Dark Empire. I mean, the list goes on. But what we didn't get a lot of the time were, let me phrase it this way. Shadows of the Empire had its own toy line. I have an example right here from this guy. So, we have Yoda right here. Shadows of the Empire, I think it had Caesar's face in the corner, and it had a purple lightsaber thing going on there. Because when Power of the Force 2 happened, they changed it from this red-orange to like a green, and that's where most of my toys came from. But they were still those big muscle ones, like they were built like Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of things. And that's always fun. Wow, what else do I have to really say about this? There's the video game for Nintendo 64, which I've never played, but apparently it's one of the best Star Wars games ever made. But yeah. So what do I give Shadows of the Empire out of 5? I give it a 5 out of 5 for the Steve Perry's novel. This is a must-read for Star Wars Expanded Universe fans, or someone wanting to get into the EU. I would hand them this book, because you don't have to read anything. It doesn't reference anything except for Empire Strikes Back. You're just getting a lot from this book. It's just so good. As for the comic, I have to give it a 3 out of 5 stars, and the only reason it doesn't get like 2 is because it's a great supplement if you've read the novel first. So I'd recommend read the novel. If you really like the novel, pick up the comic. Now, how do you get this comic? This one's a little difficult to find nowadays. There was a hardcover made for this. Don't attempt to get that. It's hundreds of dollars. They have a trade that's way out of print that's worth a lot of money. This is your best bet. The Shadows of the Empire Omnibus, which also has Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand, which I'll be reviewing really soon. It's the Timothy Zahn comic. And Shadows of the Empire Evolutions, which is the pseudo-sequel to Shadows of the Empire. So, it's a good buy. It's a little expensive. It's harder to find on eBay out of all the Star Wars Omnibuy. But that's the only place you can get the Shadows of the Empire stories. Unfortunately, Marvel hasn't reprinted that one. They've reprinted the other two. And they're in the New Republic Marvel Epic Collection Volume 1, I think. Yeah, that's right. So anyway, what do I give? Overall, check out Shadows of the Empire. Check out the soundtrack. It's such a great thing to add while reading. It's a gorgeous, just beautiful soundtrack. So, anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I even wore a Star Wars shirt that you can't tell that I wore it. But anyway guys, have a nice day. And hopefully I can get some more Star Wars read and reviewed for you. So, good night guys.